There you go.
Streaming.
Yeah, can you not hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
No, we can hear you.
awesome. Don't think we're live just yet. Let me just check. Oof.
It says streaming live up here.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does look like we are live now. Right, okay, so let's get into it. Hello, everyone watching. Oh, let me make sure I'm recording this as well. Okay, let's get into it. So we saw glimpses of chaos and absolutely no overtaking, and that is how we would describe the Monaco Grand Prix today. Welcome back to the Grid Talk podcast. Today, I am your host, Steph Wentworth from All About Steph 1 on YouTube. I am joined by sports journalist Louis Edwards.
Hello.
Motorsport podcaster Philip Mathews.
Hello.
And F1 expert Alex Booth.
Hello.
So guys, we are going to be getting into the Monaco Grand Prix today. It was not the most exciting Monaco Grand Prix that we have ever seen, but we've still got some talking points. So let's just go straight in with the big heartbreak of the weekend. Charles Leclerc qualified on pole, but it was found out about half an hour before the race that he would not be starting from pole due to damage that he sustained at the end of qualifying yesterday, and he therefore ended up not starting on pole, and then we found out that he wasn't going to start the race at all. So what were your immediate thoughts? How did you feel? Because we were all excited for the hometown hero to finally get the opportunity to show what he's capable of, and it just didn't happen. Alex, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think that kind of robbed us today of what could have been an interesting race. Leclerc starting on pole. It would have been a fairy tale for him if he could have won the race. I think it really begs the question of the rules at the moment. You know, these gearbox changes. I honestly think that I understand why they do it. It's helped them with cutting down costs and increasing reliability, but it kind of robs us fans of the entertainment as well. I really do think something in terms of deducting constructors' points, for example, rather than a potential grid penalty, which would move the driver down, because that could have easily happened this weekend. Leclerc could have crashed. He gets to keep the pole position. They change the gearbox, but Ferrari lose 5 or 10 constructors' points. You know, nobody really would notice that. Apart from purists
Ferrari.
apart from Ferrari and purists like us, but for anybody just watching on the television wanting to enjoy Monaco Grand Prix, they would have benefited from that. Instead, we lost one of the contenders for the race before it even started, and from there on, it was really Verstappen's all the way, and barring a mistake from him, it was his race. It was his race to lose, and he drove an incredible race. But yeah, today wasn't the race that I was going to bed last night excited for.
Oh, I'm the opposite. I thought that there could have been some really exciting moments, especially between Charles and Max. Philip, were you expecting a little bit of contact potentially on the opening lap between them? Could we have seen a bit of sparks flying?
I was hoping for that with the altered start, with Valtteri Bottas getting a good start for once and going and dive bombing into Max, and then that just turning the whole entire Grand Prix around. It would have probably left us with a Sainz victory, which would have been an epic thing. But in terms of Leclerc getting that pole, I was totally shocked, not by the pace, but just the fact that, you know, because he's Charles Leclerc, he's been doing this ever since he's been with the Scuderia. But the fact that he was able to get that pole and how close it was between Ferrari and Red Bull was something we haven't seen since 2018, really. And then we never even got a chance. And so there's great drivers in their home race or great drivers at big races having misfortune. Charles Leclerc at his home Grand Prix has never finished it. In this case, he didn't even get to start it. What Alex's point about, you know, going and giving up deducting points at the end of the day when you have to pay the fee at the end of the year. I think Ferrari, for all the money they have, it wouldn't hurt them to give back 10 points, because I think it's a couple $100,000 for 50,000 a point or something like that. It wouldn't hurt them, and it would actually be better for the show instead of, constant grid penalties and all these other things. And it would have at least allowed us to have something. It would have been good because Charles Leclerc is one of the only ones that doesn't really fear Max. And he's another one at that level in a sense. And unfortunately, we didn't have that. We're on to, for Leclerc and for his side of the garage, we're on to Baku. But it would have been a great thing to see.
Yeah, and Louis, how much blame can we actually place on Ferrari? Because there was a lot of speculation that Charles had done this on purpose, and Ferrari had said no, there's damage. Why would he have done this on purpose? And then they check the gearbox, they check over the car, and then it turns out there is an issue. I think it was with the rear left drive shaft or something of the sort. So Ferrari is really to blame for this because they could have ended up suffering with that penalty, or they could have checked the car sufficiently enough to make sure that it was all going to be okay for Charles on the day. So it really is Ferrari's fault, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a hefty shunt. Like you don't have crashes like that on purpose, and it was. I think we all knew sort of going into this race that maybe there was potential that is damaged. Even after Ferrari said that, well, I had a feeling deep down that something in the race was going to happen with his gearbox and something was going to break or something would happen with that gearbox and it would end Charles' race. I didn't expect it to happen an hour before the race was actually going to start. But yeah, I think the logical decision would have been to just take the penalty, change gearbox, because surely they would have known that something would go wrong. It was a big hit. And also for the problem to occur on the sort of the left drive shaft, he crashed on the right-hand side of the car. I think it could have been slight negligence from Ferrari just to not check the left-hand side of the car, considering that was not what went into the wall. But yeah, it's not a good look for Ferrari. And yeah, they certainly did throw away a victory.
Yeah, definitely. So it's a very disappointing weekend for Charles Leclerc. Very disappointing for the home crowd in Monaco to not see him starting the race from pole position starting the race full stop. So, but it was another disappointing weekend for Valtteri Bottas, who actually was doing all right in qualifying, could have potentially beaten that pole position before the red flag came out, before qualifying session was ruined. He started from second in the end, and he was running quite well up until the pit stops. Now, it all went wrong from there because they came in and they were not able to get that front right tire off, was it? I think so. So yeah, Valtteri Bottas ended up retiring in the pit lane as a result of them not being able to get that wheel nut off. So Alex, just talk us through Mercedes' terrible scenario with Bottas there.
It's not a new thing, is it? Mercedes having a disastrous pit stop. We've seen it a few times. And in particular to Valtteri Bottas, which is a shame for him because he's driven better than Lewis Hamilton all weekend, really, which is something that he really needs to do because he's coming for a bit of criticism lately, and this weekend was looking rather good for him. It's so unlucky for him. I honestly couldn't believe what I was watching when I saw it. It was just ridiculous. I don't think I've ever actually seen, in all my years watching Formula One, I've never seen a driver have to retire because the car took the wheel nut off. But again, it's probably down to the rules. The rules are that they can't go out with different sets of tires on. So it probably, if that wasn't there, he could have just gone out in the pits on an old tire, and that would have cost him performance. But it would still be in the race. Again, I think it's down to the over-regulated rule book that we've got. That I think something needs to be done about it, because why should we lose a competitor simply because he couldn't change a front tire and that he would have had different sets of tires on? It just seems ridiculous to me, but that's just my opinion. And it cost Valtteri a chance of a podium. It cost Mercedes a chance of salvaging something from what has been a below par weekend for them. And it's not going to do Bottas' confidence much good because he needs a good result and he was looking for one. He'll just be looking forward to Baku in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, Baku is one of his stronger tracks. Does have a decent track record around there. So yeah, Mercedes definitely looking ahead to the future because they did not have the best weekend. But we will get on to Lewis Hamilton and talking further about Mercedes a little bit further on. But we'll go up from the back. So those were our only two non-finishers / non-starters. Everyone else finished the race. Even Nikita Mazepin, who was definitely tipped to have potentially crashed. So him and Mick Schumacher, they finished in 18th and 19th, with Mick finishing behind Nikita today. So they actually finished 3 laps down, which is not really surprising considering the pace of the Haas right now. Let's talk about them together, because we actually saw one of the only overtakes of the race done on lap 1 when Mick decided to overtake Mazepin. But there's not really much to talk about with the Haas, is there, Philip?
No, it's just, they're out there making laps, and to be 2 laps off the pace of the rest of the field basically is not good this early in the season. But hey, I mean, they've been usually 2 laps down at most of the races this year. Egghead not crashing and not being in the way at all this weekend is surprising. That's basically all he's did. Whatever, there's a guy in Formula 2 who's the same kind of dolt like him, but he didn't do anything dumb, and he wasn't in the way. Mick Schumacher crashed in FP3, and that was basically his weekend. They're going to move on to Baku. He'll probably be in the back, and they'll just continue to be there. But I think Mick will get back to being ahead of Egghead at Baku, doing what he's been doing most of the year, and kind of trying to keep whatever confidence and build upon his experience as he moves into his second year in Formula One.
Yeah, definitely. So not really much to discuss in terms of Haas. Still right at the back, where they will likely be for the rest of the season. But someone who was quite far at the back, who we didn't necessarily expect to be there, was Yuki Sonoda. He was on an alternate strategy, didn't really play out in his favour in the end. Finished 16th. Louis, what can we really talk about with Yuki's race?
I mean, he didn't have a great qualifying. He was starting further down. I don't think we really expected Yuki to do much. But then to sort of drop behind both Williams, it was like, oh, this is getting a bit embarrassing, because I think he got overtaken by both of them pretty quickly off the start as well. And then they left him out on the medium tyre, I think it was, for absolutely ages. And then with like 10 laps to go, they went, oh, Yuki, we need to actually pit because we have to run 2 compounds. And then, he ended up back down in 16th. It wasn't a great strategy from AlphaTauri. I think they were more focused on Gasly today and just let Yuki do his business at the back. But he did set the fastest lap at one point. So
yeah, he did. He set a new lap record right before Lewis Hamilton smashed it. So that's actually something that props to Yuki. Good job. Nice try. But ahead of Yuki, like you just mentioned, we had the 2 Williams boys. We'll talk about them together as well. Williams, 750 races, so massive congratulations to them, because that is no mean feat whatsoever, but definitely not the way they would have wanted to be celebrating. P14, P15, higher than they've been in the past, but still not where they want to be at all. Alex, talk us through the Williams weekend.
Oh, you're firing me with something there to talk about Williams' weekend. Well, they both the cars finished the race, which is something. I mean, we couldn't really expect much, but barring any drama in the race, weather or something like that, a completely dry race, starting down the bottom of the grid. It's hard to really expect anything more for the Williams team. But both of them made the most of what they could. Russell again got to Q2, it shows that the pace that he's got. Latifi came off the back of a not so good practice, but and they still got the better at the start of Yuki Tsunoda's AlphaTauri, so they both got stuck in. But there wasn't really much they could do today, unfortunately.
Yeah, Williams will just keep on campaigning, keep doing what they're doing, looking forward to the future, because this year is also very similar to the Haas. It's a bit of a write-off, but yeah, both of the drivers doing exactly what they need to do, finishing the race, staying out of trouble, so not too bad. Fernando Alonso ended up in P13, so he hasn't really had the greatest start to his return to Formula One, shall we say, and finishing P13 behind his teammate who finished in P9. Not great for Fernando Alonso, is it, Philip?
Yeah, it's been a bad stretch of races here for Fernando. He doesn't look like he's at times fully invested. Maybe I don't know if the focus is gone. Kind of been saying that about another former world champion, but he definitely had a great day today. But for Fernando, it was just a his weekend was a non-starter. He really didn't have pace, and then in qualifying, not showing up either. Not sure what the motivation is, for as good of a driver as he is, one of the best that we've ever seen uh, in Formula One. You just wonder what is really driving him in a season which he's already checked off as, oh yeah, we're not competing, we're going into 22, but you're Fernando Alonso, you should be able to push your teammate at least, not be just languishing in the back and not really just making up laps. It's just it's not what we would expect when we saw him sign back to join Formula One again.
Yeah, definitely unexpected. I think we all wanted to see more performance from Fernando Alonso, and we've been very disappointed thus far. But he'll be looking to turn it around once we go to Baku again. But I think probably one of the biggest disappointments of the weekend, besides Charles Leclerc not starting, was the fact that Daniel Ricciardo qualified so terribly and then just wasn't able to convert that into any sort of positive result in the race. So we saw the beautiful McLaren Gulf livery, we saw it running around kind of right at the back of the grid. Louis, how disappointed were you to see Daniel so far off the pace, especially with his teammate Lando?
Yeah, it was a lap down, which is it's not always great to see, and he's really struggled with the car all weekend. It's really not been a good weekend for Daniel, sort of from Thursday all the way to the race. He's just not looked comfortable. The car just doesn't seem to be gelling well around him. And yeah, it just reflected in both qualifying yesterday and the race today. He couldn't make any gains. They tried to do something against Raikkonen. It didn't work out. They ended up staying behind him. I think probably by the end of the race, Daniel got very fed up of looking at the back of an Alfa Romeo because it was just really not going his way, and it was never going to go his way. And unfortunately, the nature of this track means that he couldn't progress, and he was kind of doomed to score no points this weekend.
Yeah, it was really disappointing, especially for the Daniel Ricciardo fans. We all know that he is allegedly the king of the streets around Monaco, so the fact that he wasn't able to showcase that was definitely a big disappointment. But the Alfa Romeo that he was stuck behind was Kimi Raikkonen, who I thought actually had a pretty decent race. He did well off the start line, managing to jump Daniel at the very beginning. Is there anything else that we can really talk about regarding Kimi, Alex?
Probably not Kimi. But the Alfa Romeo on the whole had a decent weekend. If I can talk about Giovinazzi instead of
go for it, we'll go straight. Yeah,
thank you. I want to bring an honourable mention to Giovinazzi. I think he's driven fantastic all weekend, considering the equipment he's got, and he got a point. He probably didn't get the best starts, and he found himself behind Ocon towards the end. Maybe he feels that he probably could have been 9th instead of 10th, but it was a good performance from him this weekend. And Alfa Romeo got 1 point on the board. They after losing some points in Imola due to the penalty for Kimi. Kimi, they tried the strategy of going long, didn't they? And there wasn't really much they were going to gain from that today. But they finished ahead of Fernando Alonso and Daniel Ricciardo, so that's something they can go away and hold their heads up high about. So a pretty decent weekend for the Alfa Romeo team.
Definitely. I think Alpha looked really strong around the streets, which is not something I think we were expecting necessarily. But yeah, Gio definitely pulled it out of the bag. He had the edge over Kimi all weekend, and I think he did a really good job in the race to hold position. I think all of the drivers actually deserve a bit of props because we didn't really see anyone making any silly mistakes or going into the wall or anything like we could have potentially seen in Monaco. So all of the drivers played it fairly safe, I would say, and came home. But in 9th, we have Esteban Ocon. Now, we briefly talked about how he has been performing in comparison to Fernando Alonso, but I think 9th is a fairly stable result for Ocon and decent for Alpine. Would you not say, Phil?
Yeah, it's talking about Alonso and what he's been doing. I think Ocon has responded and been able to step his game up, knowing that he's on a contract year. Rumors about Gasly, who knows what might happen with Sauber because of the the connections with Alfa Romeo thing going away, you know, so there's different things that might be in play, but Ocon stepping up relative to what the car is giving him this year. It's not as good as the car they had last year with Ricardo, but they are able to, you know, you're grinding out points. You're trying to put yourself in position for Constructors Championship and getting that money so you can get towards 2022 and be more competitive. The Renault power unit seems to be worthwhile. Is not the best by any stretch of the imagination, but it isn't absolute garbage as, say, like the Honda was a few years ago, you know, like, so you're on pace, you're giving yourself an opportunity, you're getting the data, put yourself in a place so that later in the year, maybe you can compete at some of these later Grand Prix. And Ocon's doing that and trying to solidify a place on the grid after having to take a hiatus of a year because of the deal with Force India. So good on him to get points, maximize his weekend, and move towards another street course here in a couple of weeks' time.
Definitely. Everyone's looking forward to the future. Yeah, I'm really excited for Baku as well, considering we've just been on a street circuit, but this is a fairly slow street circuit. Monaco's the slowest circuit on the calendar, but Baku has the longest straight. We can see some massive top speeds. So it's a very different street circuit, which I'm very much looking forward to. But let's move on. So we're going to top 8 now, and we have Lance Stroll. We did see Lance make a fairly interesting overtake into the hairpin early on in the race. I think it was the first lap, actually, which was one of the only overtakes that we saw. But Lance did a pretty good job at sending it up the inside. Finished in 8th, a lap down still. But it's a decent result for him. I'd say that it's definitely positive coming out of such a difficult weekend.
Yes, he was. I think it was the only driver to start on the hard tyres in this race. It really did make a very much an alternative strategy work for him, starting outside the points and then finishing 8th. It was a decent result for him. I think overall Aston Martin did a good job, and I think Stroll will be happy with that. Given sort of he couldn't overtake. Well, he did overtake, but beyond that, can't overtake and then make a decent strategy work. I think he can be happy with that. I think Aston Martin may have been not expecting to get a double points finish this weekend, and I think they'll be very happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely chuffed. And we'll come on to Sebastian Vettel later because I'm sure we've all got a lot to say on that. But now we're moving on to the 7th place finisher, which was Sir Lewis Hamilton. So what a shocker. The championship leader coming into this race qualified in 7th. Ended up being bumped up to 6th as a result of Charles Leclerc not starting the race. So technically started 6th, I guess. But he finished in 7th. He was not happy on the radio. He went for the undercut. I think he was the first driver to actually make a pit stop. Didn't really work for him. He got jumped by Sebastian Vettel ahead. Pierre Gasly, who he was fighting with and trying to do the undercut with, he still ended up ahead of Lewis. So it wasn't the best weekend for Lewis, and it definitely not the best call from Mercedes, was it, Alex?
Well, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the fantastic strategic decision by Mercedes, and today it didn't work out, and that's just the way it works. I'm personally eating a slice of humble pie because viewers of the podcast will remember after the Portuguese Grand Prix that I predicted that many races would be dominated by Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, and today I've been proven wrong, which I'm glad I have been because it's been nice to see some competition for the championship. As for Lewis Hamilton, Mercedes were not the quickest all weekend ever since Thursday practice, and for Lewis it'll probably be. Very rarely does he have an off weekend, and this could end up being just his only one that he has this season. It's very rare that we see him that far down. He understandably wasn't happy when you're a winner like he is, and you're not going to be happy when it's not working out too well. But you know, it's still only 4 points behind Max Verstappen. It's not the end of the world. He'll bounce back. Mercedes will. Let's just get this one over with and look ahead to 2 weeks' time.
Definitely. And Phil, was there anything that Mercedes could have done to anticipate that this would have been the reaction? Do you think they should have left Hamilton out longer, knowing how good he is in terms of tyre management and tyre strategy? Do you think they blinked too soon for the undercut?
Yeah, I think they could have left him out, but who knows? Maybe they go and leave him out. Everybody else pits, and a safety car comes out, and then he's stuck the same way. There really was, as Alex said, they really damned if you do, damned if you don't. It wasn't gonna really work out. He didn't have great pace all weekend, which is rare. I'm I'm looking towards what they will do in Baku as much as anything. I mean, fine. He let the points lead go. They let the constructors lead go. So now they're going to go and focus. So now they're going to be a lot more vested into making sure this car is able to perform on all circuits. They're going to also be focused on these details, because the fact is there was no passing whatsoever. So if you knew, unless you were absolutely 100% guaranteed that this was going to come off, you probably would have been better. Like, he ran a couple of years ago, he ran 60 laps on a set of tires. So the notion is, and the two hard tire runners ran most of the race. So I think they could have ran him longer, maybe get a little bit of a gap in between the traffic, give yourself an opportunity. Sure. But hey, if that's the worst Grand Prix finish he has all year, then, I think he'll be okay in the grand scheme of things as we go through a 20-plus race championship.
Yeah, definitely. I am a bit worried that Mercedes should Max win the championship, Mercedes will look back on this and think, wow, this is one of the races that we, screwed it up. This is one of the races in which this cost Lewis the title, or cost us the constructors title, because Red Bull is now in the lead. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a weekend of reflection for Mercedes, and hopefully they'll come back stronger in Baku, because it wasn't great seeing Max fight on his. Well, he wasn't fighting anyone. It wasn't great seeing Max just on his own for the majority of the race, and we definitely want to see a fight between Lewis and Max. So fingers crossed, that's what we get for Baku. Okay, Pierre Gasly, the guy that Lewis spent the whole race trying to get past and he was just seeing the rear wing of the AlphaTauri the whole time. But I think Pierre had a great race, solid, qualified P6. That was great. Finished P6. He did exactly what he needed to do, right?
Yeah, he did exactly what he needed to do. He, just did, Gasly has been on this massive upwards trajectory sort of ever since he got dropped by Red Bull. And, this is just a continuation of it. He is a remarkably good, talented driver. I don't think anyone could really doubt that. And the fact that he's just got so much confidence, and to, spend 70 odd laps with Lewis Hamilton on your rear wing, for some drivers they could, buckle under the pressure, make a mistake, but Gasly was solid throughout the entire Grand Prix, and well deservingly came home sixth. And I think it's a great result, not just for Gasly, but also for AlphaTauri.
Yeah, I think AlphaTauri are looking extremely strong in terms of the championship, even though Yuki didn't have the best weekend. Pierre did. So AlphaTauri is looking a lot stronger than I personally anticipated them to be. So definitely a positive one for them. And our driver of the day, the fans voted Sebastian Vettel as the Formula One driver of the day today. He came home in fifth. This is his first points finish for Aston in his new season. So massive congratulations to Sebastian. I think he had a fantastic race. The way he did the overcut on Lewis and Pierre definitely worked really well, as they I think he was going wheel to wheel with Pierre through Beau Rivage, which was wonderful to see. And then the TV cameras cut away from it, and we didn't get to see that bit of spicy action. But Seb ended up ahead. He finished P5. It is a positive weekend for him and for Aston, isn't it, Alex?
Oh, definitely, and he needed it, yeah, because it had been a pretty poor start to the season for him. But they've gone to Monaco. They haven't had outstanding pace, but they had enough, and Vettel used the strategy to good effect and enabled him to get the result of fifth place. I was a bit worried at the start because he seems to be dropping back a little bit, but then the pit crew did their work, and he got his head down, and he got the result. And at last, some good news for Sebastian Vettel and Aston Martin, and he won the driver of the day pole, which I'm not 100% sure I agree with, but
we'll get on to that later.
What does it matter what I say? But at last, some good news for Sebastian Vettel and Aston Martin.
Definitely positive weekend all around for the guys in green. Okay, top 4. We're talking about Sergio Perez. A great finish for him, starting 9th and making it all the way up to P4. That was a pretty good drive, I'd say, around the streets of Monaco, wouldn't you say, Phil?
Yeah, it was a great run for Checo. I mean, if he could have had a little better Saturday, which is at times during his career, that's been the thing for Sergio Perez, or struggling on Saturday has kind of been an Achilles heel. But I think he's getting around to the car and able to figure out how to get the most out of it, especially in race, which has always been his thing. So once he puts the qualifying together, it's going to be a really tough battle for Mercedes with this constructors championship. And he had the pace, I think, to pass Lando, just had nowhere to go. So moving towards some of these racetracks, Baku's one of his best racetracks. I think it's an opportunity for some momentum building for Checo after kind of a medium middle of the road kind of start for him. I think he's building up his confidence in this car and his team. And I think it's a positive run to get from 9th to 4th at Monaco. I mean, it was great calls by his team and a great car. And so team effort there, good result, and move forward with that.
Yeah, and Louis, how positive do you think the performance of Checo is, and how positive do you think it is for Red Bull? Because now they are ahead in the championship, and Checo really pulled it out of the bag today when both Mercedes drivers were almost kind of out of contention when they were taken, out of contention for the win and for the podium. So it was really important for Checo to get this result today for Red Bull. And do you think he impressed?
Yeah, I definitely think he did. I mean, he was a bit bogged down at the start. I think he was stuck behind Sebastian Vettel. But no, his results there was instrumental in Red Bull sort of now climb to the top of the Constructors' Championship. And these are the performances that Red Bull need. They need these performances when Mercedes faltered. They need someone to be there to pick up the remains, get those points, and that's exactly what Perez has done today. And sort of when we go to tracks like, in 2 weeks' time, like Baku, where there are overtaking possibilities, even if he does get a poor qualifying, he needs to be, up there making sure he's challenging, get those overtakes done, because we do expect the Red Bulls to be quick. So hopefully this sort of decent result from Perez can finally give him the confidence in the car that he needs to now push on and hopefully help Max and hopefully help Red Bull win the championship this season.
Definitely. So it's all looking positive for Red Bull exiting this weekend. But now we move on to the podium sitters, and we have Lando Norris in P3. So this is already his second podium of the season. What are we on, round 5? So that's 2 out of 5 races Lando's been on the podium. I think that's fantastic going for the McLaren so far. I think he's demonstrated excellent ability, and he's definitely performing at a much higher level than we all anticipated, I'd say, and performing at a much higher level than Daniel Ricciardo at the minute, who is his more experienced teammate. So what do we have to say about Lando's podium? I think he drove a great weekend. He kept a cool head, especially when he was being hunted down by Sergio Perez. We know it's difficult to overtake, but he was not forced into any mistakes or anything of the such. So all around, very, very positive for Lando, right, Alex?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's driving superbly. Second podium in 5 races, as you mentioned, and he's completely getting a better out of Daniel Ricciardo. I mean, we know it's hard moving teams, and especially during the 2020 and 2021 season where there was very little testing. So it's probably the worst time to actually move teams and have a change of car. But I don't think we really expected it to be that significant as it has been. And Ricciardo's really seems to be struggling at McLaren, and Norris is getting the best out of it, and it's great to see. It's his young talent which he's demonstrating, and a third position in Monaco. I mean, you couldn't ask for better from him. He drove brilliantly. He didn't crack under the pressure from Perez, which he could so easily have done, and he brought it home. And it was nice to see that gorgeous livery from McLaren that they were running this weekend doing well.
Definitely. It's what the golf livery deserves in reality.
Absolutely.
But it was great to see his friend Carlos Sainz on the podium. I think everyone was really happy to see that Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris content when they were both on the podium together. So Carlos Sainz is now the most recent Ferrari podium sitter, which was Sebastian Vettel. But it was really good that Ferrari were able to salvage what went wrong with their weekend with the whole Charles incident by reaping the podium of Carlos Sainz. So I think Sainz drove really, really well, kept his cool. He definitely showed a lot of pace this weekend. Unfortunately, wasn't able to challenge for the win, but I think that's a very, very solid second place, and Ferrari will be extremely happy with that, right, Phil?
Absolutely. I mean, for the nightmare scenario that they went through on the one side of the garage to go and maximize their weekend, Sainz had pace all weekend. He thought he had a chance at pole like Bottas and Max to go and at times make time, whether it was because Max was saving or not. It seemed like there was times where Carlos Sainz was really giving it, like you always know that you're going to get the most out of it from Carlos Sainz, and for him to being in a new team first year with Ferrari and people questioning was that the right move and all that, it looks like that is definitely the right decision. Uh, and for him, he's really assimilated into this organization very well, and it's only going to build from here in terms of his positive momentum. And I think it'll also keep the energy. I think, seeing how Charles was so happy for Carlos and for the team in general, it shows there's a good team unity within their organization that hasn't been there for the last few years. And for Sainz to get a podium at Monaco is a huge deal for him in his career. He's gotten a couple other ones, but the fact is, this is a big deal for him, and he can build on this. And in the midfield battle between them and McLaren, it's going to go down to the wire. And so every point will count as in terms of who's going to finish third in constructors. So great run by Carlos, and to beat his buddy Lando there today at Monaco.
Yeah, definitely positive. I agree. I think the McLaren Ferrari fight is going to be extremely tight, as we can see it as it was this weekend. So as long as Daniel Ricciardo can get on the pace of the other three, I think that the fight will be extremely tight, extremely long in this Constructors' Championship battle. Okay, but we're moving on to talking about our race winner now, Max Verstappen. He took a commanding victory. I don't think anyone could potentially have challenged him whatsoever. He looks extremely dominant, extremely comfortable. He was coming back, feeding back to all the Red Bull mechanics. I'm fine. These tires are doing great. Like, leave me to it. I'm enjoying myself. Like, I'm having a good time. So yeah, that definitely reflected on the podium as well. And I think you can see how much it meant to him to win this. Max Verstappen is now in the lead of the Drivers' Championship. Libby, what more can he do to get the better of Lewis Hamilton when Lewis is on the pace next time?
I think he just needs to keep doing what he's doing. He's taken a huge lot of sort of momentum from this race into the next race in Baku. Again, as I said earlier, where the Red Bull are expected to be the quicker out of the two cars. But for this weekend, this was Max's race. He needed to win this weekend. Even before this race, Max has had such poor luck in Monaco, usually created by himself. He bins it either in FP3 or quali at some point, and it just ruins his weekend. But this time he got it right. Yeah, he did get a bit lucky with Charles sort of bowing out of the race. But Max is usually very good off the start. He could have perhaps got a run on him at turn one, but I highly doubt it. But no, he did everything he needed to do. He took full advantage of the situation. Got off the line. Well, he didn't get off the line brilliantly, but he made sure to cut Bottas off straight away, secure it, get track position, and then just nurse his tyres. And Bottas really didn't look like he's going to really mount much of a challenge. Even when Sainz started coming at him later in the race, Max had it under control. He knew what he was doing. Solid race from Max, and now he's in the lead of the championship. It does certainly make things a lot more interesting.
It does. It spiced things up a little bit. It's all a little bit unpredictable now, which is exactly what we want as fans. So let's talk about the championship, actually, because now we have Max Verstappen in the lead on 105 points, ahead of Lewis Hamilton on 101 points, Lando Norris in P3 on 56 points. That doesn't seem right. Yes, maybe. We'll check.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. I thought Lando would be on way more points. I don't know. But yeah, so that's the top three currently right now, with Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez taking P4 and P5. Charles has dropped back now to P6. I think he was P5 before this weekend. So we've definitely had a little bit of a shake-up at the top of the championship right now. What more shake-ups can we expect going into Baku? Do we think that Lewis is going to be able to take that P1 position back in the championship? What are you predicting, Alex?
I really don't know. I don't expect Mercedes to be struggling as much in Baku as they did in Monaco. Whether they'll be as dominant as they were in the past, or certainly show the speed that they had in Portugal and Spain, I'm really not sure, because I do expect Verstappen to be very strong, but I do expect Mercedes to be closer. And now that because what I will say, I don't think there'd have been many opportunities for Verstappen to get as much ground on Hamilton as he has done. So he's taken that opportunity really well. And it's allowed us to have this fantastic championship battle shown. But it's going to be a lot closer in Baku, I think. I'd be surprised if it was a Verstappen victory and Hamilton was as far down as he was today.
Yeah, definitely. And moving on to Phil, we've got Lando Norris is currently on 56 points in P3. Daniel Ricciardo only on 24 points. So he's got Lando has about double the points that Daniel currently has. So that is great news for Lando, yeah?
Oh, definitely. He got an extension on his contract, so the team's set for next year. He's driving at a high level in his third year in Formula One. It's a good time for McLaren in general. They got a great vibe within the organization. Of course, Daniel Ricciardo, I'm sure, is not liking how things have gone for most of the season, but I think he'll turn it around. He's one of the best. He will figure it out. Qualifying has definitely put him on the back foot all year. So, but that's going to be key. Not only Lando trying to possibly maintain third in the drivers' championship, but in terms of their battle with Ferrari for third in the constructors' championship, that's going to be something to watch. I mean, it's less than 20 points between Lando Norris and Sainz. So it's going to be an interesting battle within that group right there. Ricardo, Gasly, Ocon, there's a small group there between Ricardo and then Stroll, which is like 15 points or 20 points out to like Alonso. So, I mean, there's a couple of little pods there within, but for Lando, he's going to keep on with the positive momentum they've built all year. And if they have good reliability, then it's going to be tough to beat them in regards to that third in the constructors.
Definitely. And we're over a fifth of the way through the championship right now. It's looking like a two-horse race up front with just 4 points separating Verstappen and Hamilton. But the battle of the second drivers is on with Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas. So Valtteri is currently in fourth place on 47. Checo being in fifth place with 44 points. So they are very, very closely matched. Louis, who do you think is going to come out on top between the two second drivers?
I think over the course of the season, I think Bottas would probably be the safe bet. I think just Perez, it's still his first season at Red Bull, and he's still that, he still has that significant gap to Verstappen. He is still that, 3-4 tenths, like consistently 3-4 tenths off Verstappen. But with Bottas, he is known for, he can be there. We've seen this weekend, he's sticking on the second row. He put it like much further ahead of Hamilton. He can get sort of much more in that fight. He can get those pole positions. I don't think that's quite there for Perez just yet. So I think it could be close, but Perez really needs to start getting his qualifying better. Needs to start the races higher up the grid to be able to challenge those Mercedes, because at the moment he's just still that little too far off. But as for Bottas, I think he's always going to be there or thereabouts. His qualifying pace usually is very strong. So, I would probably say Bottas.
Interesting. What would the rest of you say? Alex, who would you say?
Between Perez and Bottas?
Yeah.
No, I agree with Louis. I think over the course of the season, it would have to be Bottas and Perez. Similar to Ricardo, really, with McLaren, he's struggling to get to grips with that car, and it's going to take some time. Although, and as both Phil and Louis have mentioned, it's on Saturday that Perez is really losing out. Had he started further up the grid, it could well have been a Red Bull 1-2 today. Really, had Perez been further up. So that's one thing that he needs to work on. And if we're going back 2 weeks ago, where Mercedes utilised the opportunity to use Bottas as to help Hamilton win the race, whereas Red Bull have not really been able to do that with the second driver, and that's one thing that they need to do if they're going to win the championship this year. So at the moment, I don't see Perez being the best second driver in comparison to Bottas. But time will tell. We'll see. Maybe if he can get to grips with it, then maybe in the second half of the season he can really show what he can do. But at the moment, he's not quite there.
Phil, do you concur?
Yeah, I wanted to go and be different for the sake of it, but the fact of the matter is it's true what Louis and Alex have said. I mean, the experience that Bottas has, the relative comfortability he has within the team, and how the harmony there. When he puts laps together, which he seems to do on Saturdays, and he occasionally does on Sundays, he is going to be the more likely person to come through. Checo has put together great races before, of course, in his career, hence being here as long as he has. But to put it together in a big team, it hasn't the whole weekend hasn't been put together yet, and until he can put a whole weekend together, it's going to be hard for Max to basically play 2-on-1, which when both Mercedes are functional, that's usually what it is. And Red Bull over time has proven that they're not generally capable of making two competitive cars. So the fact that Checo is not having like mechanical difficulties these days is a positive change from recent years. So in that sense, I'll give him credit. But there's work that he has to do on his side, and if he does that, then it could get really, really interesting in this World Championship, the Constructors Championship, especially.
Definitely. Oh, I would disagree with you all. I definitely think Checo will have the edge eventually once he gets up to speed. But that's interesting. I thought at least one of you might be on my side, but apparently not. In terms of the Constructors Championship, we have Red Bull Racing, Honda in the lead at the minute on 149 points. Mercedes just behind them on 148. So this weekend really cost Mercedes a lot of points in their haul against Red Bull. So not doing great. And then the McLaren Ferrari fight, we have McLaren in P3 with 80 and Ferrari in P4 with 78. And then we drop right back down to Aston Martin, who is in P5 with 19 points. So the fight behind there is very interesting, because we have AlphaTauri in 6th with 18 and Alpine in 7th with 17. So just 2 points separating those. 3 points. I can't count. I can't do maths. But just 3 points separating those three teams. So the Constructors is definitely heating up as we head to Baku. And finally, to round out our Monaco Grand Prix review, I'm going to ask you guys who your drivers of the day were. So we'll start with you, Alex. Who do you think deserved it, since you wouldn't have voted for Seb? Who would you have voted for?
Well, you touched on this earlier, Steph. I must say, I think we have to state the quality of the drivers. I mean, it's 78 lap race around Monaco, and I know Leclerc had his problem yesterday, but of the 19 who started, not one of them crashed, and I think that just goes to show, the level that Formula One is. I mean, we'll probably be complaining that it was a processional race, but on the other hand, it was a demonstration of how good the drivers are. I'm going to be boring and say that the driver of the day probably has to go to Max Verstappen. I mean, he drove fantastically. He didn't. He learned from his previous mistakes that he's made in Monaco, whether it's been in practice or qualifying. I'll be brutally honest. I thought going into the weekend that there might be a mistake in him, because he's really up for it. They're taking the battle to Hamilton, and exuberance might have got the better of him, and he didn't do it. So I've been proven wrong again, and I'm very glad to be proven wrong again. Yeah, I'll have to go with Max Verstappen. But while we're on me, I just want to make a mention to, I think Phil will know who I'm talking about. It's not Formula 1 related, but the racing world, we've lost Andre Ribeiro this weekend to cancer, the former IndyCar driver in the 1990s and a very good driver as well, a former teammate to David Coulthard in British Formula 3. So condolences to his family, and it's a sad loss to the world of motorsport.
Only 55 years old, Andre Ribeiro.
Very sad.
Too soon. Thank you for that tribute. Heart and prayers and love going out to his family right now. Phil, who would you say your driver of the day is?
You know what? I'll go and I'll give it to Carlos Sainz. Honestly, I had one in my head, and then I said, you know what? I'm just going to go with Carlos. To go and have to. He talked about the pressure of having to carry the team on his back after what happened with Charles Leclerc, and to go and get a good start, maintain, be in a position where he would have probably gotten a podium anyway, but then to maximize everything with Mercedes issues to get a second place finish, first podium for Ferrari in a couple of years in general. Big deal for him. A lot of positivity going on there with the Scuderia as they move forward here. And Carlos Sainz is my driver of the day.
A worthy choice. Thank you very much. Louis, finally, who is your driver of the day?
If I was going with my personal bias and sort of my heart, I'd go with Lando Norris. But honestly, I think I'm going to give it to Sergio Perez. I think he drove a fantastic race. I think he came so close to a podium, and I think if it just wasn't for the fact that Monaco was so difficult to overtake, I think he would have definitely got past Norris, because Norris was really struggling on those hard tyres. So I'm going to give it to Sergio Perez. I think he drove a fantastic race.
Definitely worthy inclusions, all of them. You could give anyone driver of the day today. I think everyone drove really, really well, like I said before. I'm going to give it to Lando just for not buckling under the pressure at the very, very end of Sergio Perez. I mean, Gasly was under a lot of pressure as well, but I think that Lando managed to cope really well, especially when his tyres were dropping off form. So I'll give it to him. So yeah, I think we can all agree that there were a lot of drivers who are deserving of driver of the day today, as we did see some incredible displays of driving. So that is a very, very positive thing. But now we move on to Baku. So thanks everybody for watching. We always broadcast these shows live as they air on YouTube. So make sure you like the F1 Grid Talk podcast channel on YouTube so that you can see them as they air. All of our podcasts are available on Amazon Music, YouTube, Verbal, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Omni Studio, and Pocket Casts. Just search for the title F1 Grid Talk. There is a massive back catalogue of shows in case you want to sink your teeth into them. This is episode 107, I believe, so there are plenty to check out if you fancy it. We also have a subreddit, so search for F1 Grid Talk, and we have a Patreon as well. So you can support us if you want to help us get better mics, better equipment for to improve the quality of the show. So yeah, if you are interested in that, we will be back next weekend to preview the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, which is set to be a very, very exciting weekend and one I'm sure many of you are looking forward to. But thank you all so much for listening. We hope you take care, stay safe, and that is the end of the show. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.